Well, not really happy, but let's all take a moment to celebrate Juneteenth. It is definitely a moment to remember and something that I wanted to bring up for everyone. If you don't know what Juneteenth is, it's a um, commemoration of a tragic event that happened in Tulsa close to 100 years ago. So research that and take that into consideration for today. Um, Okay, off to the rest of the broadcast. Today we have Chris Dexter. He has broken into cybersecurity coming from an unusual background. I haven't seen many people that were in the fitness industry and having broken into cybersecurity. So when I saw his story, I definitely wanted to reach out to him and see what some of the parallels were and what made him interested in cybersecurity, as well as hear his journey for breaking into cybersecurity to share with you today, so that if you were taking a similar path, you can follow in his footsteps, maybe learn from him, and maybe he inspires you to break in. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure. So, my journey started probably back in college. Kind of, never really thought about cybersecurity in general. Was more in the fitness side of things, majored in physical education, wanted to become a teacher, you know, teach at the high school level, coach football, wrestling, track. Then, joined the army, was in the army for 8 years, did that, and teaching got away from me, went into the fitness industry, kind of job hopped fitness industry for about 6 years. And during that time frame, I'd had various jobs in between fitness jobs, and one of them, I was working at a bank just as a teller, and during that time, I actually got phished. Um, Cleaned me out for about $1,200. It was my fault. I was dumb, but at the time, I didn't know really. My main thing was, oh, it's sounds good, as most people think, right? Oh, I pay this much, I get this much back. Perfect, sounds good. Oh, we just need access to your bank account. Okay, not a problem. Well, yeah, that was dumb on my end. um, so going from there, I worked at, if people are in fitness, I worked at Orange Theory Fitness for about 3 years, ended there as being a head coach. I wanted to know what was next for me. That was the top of the line, really, for that. I wasn't going to get any higher. So I was like, okay, what can I do? I have a passion for helping people, which is why I was in the fitness industry, making them feel safe, having them have a better life. So I thought, okay, what can I transition into that is similar but different, is going to get me, more pay, be able to get me into a better position, into a job where, it's more of a career base. Um, so luckily, I had always been into computers. I've always been into, um, kind of the security aspect of things. And then I thought, in the army, I was for 6 years, I was an all source intelligence analyst. So military intelligence. I can't talk too much about the position because I did a lot of top secret stuff. But I kind of thought about that, used that more of my background in the critical thinking and analytical mindset to gear towards cyber. So I started just applying to positions that I thought were interesting. Had a job, not a job opportunity, but I interviewed. Now I'm blanking on the name, but a big government contract that has an office here in Rolling Meadows in Illinois, and unfortunately didn't get that position just because of my background and my experience. And so I was like, okay, I don't know. Started applying. Every application got turned down that I was applying to. Then, luckily, one of my members at Orange that I coached works at Discover Financial Services, major credit card. She worked on the product services side, and reached out to her. She knew I was interested. I was like, hey, do you know of any positions in this area? Luckily, she used to work with a guy that it was in the information security department at Discover. She sent over my resume to him. He passed it up to my manager, got a call, had the interviews, and then it took a little while, probably about a month later, I got the job offer. That is, in a nutshell, my story.
Well, let's dive into the little pieces of that nutshell.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you had transferable skills. What were some of those transferable skills as you thought about your previous military experience? I know you mentioned like critical thinking, analysis. What other skill sets did you think about as you were considering other fields other than fitness training, and how they would relate?
I would say those are the two biggest ones. So critical thinking, and I went to a liberal arts college, Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa, and they taught critical thinking as well. And just having the mindset to be able to look at a problem, right? Problem solving in general, and think through that in different aspects, thinking outside of the box in various ways. And as I like to say on my team and with our department, not being the status quo. What's going to change to better the company, better the department, to make yourself more secure in that department, but also just in general, right? I'm a big proponent of, hey, change your life every day, do something different to excel at life and make the most out of life. And that critical thinking component to it is huge. The analytical mindset to be able to say, in general, if you're in the military or not. And so what we do a lot is, so my job was taking different pieces from all of our intel sources. So you have your signal analysts, your humidirs, a bunch of other ones, right? Your CIs, things like that. And I know there's a lot of acronyms, but there's different intel analysts that are breaking down different sections. And my job was to take all of that, combine it into a report and PowerPoint, and basically brief your officers. So the highest level person I ever briefed was a 1-star general one time. And he, and having that ability to not be scared to talk to people that high up, right? You talk to a 1-star general, he's got 20 years experience in the Army, he's going to know. He's been there, right? More than a guy that's only been in for 4 years. So taking those attributes, being able to communicate effectively is another skill, both active listening as well as communicating back, asking the right questions. So all of those skills, it's those soft skills that are very hard to teach in a corporate setting that you're able to get from the Army or military background because of everything you have to do. And I think those soft skills really helped me excel and be in the position I am right now within corporate America, going from a fitness industry to this.
Nice. Okay. So let's talk about your journey now. You kind of glazed over it, that you got to the top of the ladder at Orange Theory Fitness, and you're starting to explore cybersecurity careers. How long was that process? How many applications? How many different companies did you interview with?
So interview-wise, I didn't really interview with that many. So I probably sent out well over 100 applications, using different job sites, right? Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, Monster, I think I used. Just when you're looking for jobs, you just got to plug and chug is what I like to say most of the time. Kind of changing up the verbiage of my resume, things like that. One of the things that I did is when I knew I wanted to start looking, I used my network and I used my available resources. One of my old commander for my unit who was in the field, I talked to him and I was like, hey, can you check over my resume? Can you make sure it's worded correctly? he helped me change some wording with my Army experience to gear towards this position. So I definitely am, if you're in the same position that I was 2 years ago, use your resources, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions and utilize that. I asked my dad, who is, he 40 plus years as an accountant, who worked at Arthur Andersen and then Deloitte, and he's been through the process of hiring people, right? Tips and tricks, and when you go into interview, what do you do? What don't you do? Because it's interviewing for a fitness job is way different than interviewing for a corporate job. So those types of things. Once I got my resume set, then I sent it out. Follow up with people if you didn't hear back within a couple of days or a week, and then along with sending out those resumes and those applications, it's who do I know in my network that's in this field or might know somebody in this field. So I started reaching out to people around that area. Ultimately, I think I interviewed at maybe 4 places total. And then finally I got the, interview at Discover, and landed that position. And that took a little while just because I'll be honest, the human resources department at Discover is very, very, very slow.
Well, let's talk about your hunting strategy. What strategies did you use as you hunted for your next role? Were there certain things that you were looking for? How did you do that hunt?
So I don't know if it was certain things I was looking for. Obviously, entry-level positions was my main thing. And then if it listed a salary on the job description, because I know some do, I kind of filtered by that as well, because I knew what I wanted to make and then would go from there. As well as what you were interested in, right? What are you good at? I didn't have experience in, hands-on type of stuff, technical stuff, right? So ethical hacking was out, penetration testing was out. I didn't have experience coding, so anything coding, web developers, application developers, software engineer, things like that, I knew were out of the picture. So I kind of look, okay, what can, again, using my background, so my analytical background again, is where I came into it, right? Yeah, I would have loved to try to get into penetration testing because, that's exciting stuff to do. However, I knew with my background, I wasn't going to be able to jump into that right away. So I would filter out basically, when I'm hunting, basically by, okay, you need to figure out first, what is it that you like to do and where can your skills and background align with? And to how to sell yourself is, I think, the biggest thing of, hey, when I'm hunting and you look at the job description, can I sell myself in a way to this job that I have a chance to at least maybe interview? And you might be lucky enough to land that interview right away. You might not. And that's okay. I used every interview that I, didn't get the offer as an experience to learn and grow. Say, okay, what can I do better next time? And then I reached out to my network. I have a buddy that works in HPE now. He used to work for Lenovo, and I would ask him, hey, what should I be looking for? Or, how can I do this? So he would kind of help me out because he's been in that industry, right? He works more on the hardware side of things and selling side, but he was able to at least help, like, what should I actually be looking for in jobs? But also it's just up to you. Like I said, I just had to determine on what would I ultimately like to do.
And when it came to, so you're looking for entry-level roles, how did you assess, for example, what sort of skills that you were good at? Had you had previous education, training, self-study? Like, what was your educational background coming into this for cybersecurity roles?
None. I'll be honest. I might have, known a thing or two or known some concepts. But honestly, I was coming in on a blank slate. Besides having Microsoft Suite experience, right, working with Excel and Word, and the biggest thing for me was selling my analytical skills. And I've worked with data before. I'm good with Microsoft Excel. I'm good with numbers. It kind of runs in my family. So is being able to sell myself on that as well. That, again, I think that's, why it probably took about 6 months to a year when I first started looking for me to actually land this job.
And you mentioned you had one of your former military commanders look at your resume. What did you take from your military experience to put on your resume that related to the cybersecurity role?
I think it was more just wordsmithing it. So it was, okay, what have I done in my career so far that I could put on that resume that would kind of relate to different aspects of cyber? And I think also with an entry level position, they're looking for, I know some entry levels are like 4 years experience in cyber. Well, I don't know how you get that, but sure. So I think it's more just as an entry level, right? You're looking at, hey, do you have the discipline to get the job done? Have you worked with teammates? Have you, how well do you work on a team? When you go into those interviews, they'll ask questions like that. But on the resume itself, it's, okay, for a certain amount of time, I led a group of, 5 soldiers. I was able to teach them skills and training within our field. I was able to analyze different intelligence work, whether it's maps or it's, briefings or it's message traffic that comes in that you get from other intelligence analysts. And it's really just breaking down information to the simplest form and being able to look at that and say, okay, what can I do with this information? How does it relate? How can I talk to the officers in charge or your commanding officers and the ones you're going to be briefing about, hey, this is what the current situation is. This is what I think we need to do. That alone at a high level is essentially, to me, is what I've experienced is cyber and information security. It's, hey, break this down and then do it. As well as, and I forgot to mention this as well, every time you brief or give a presentation, you have to do a risk assessment. Well, that's what I do every day now. So so that risk assessment, it's the simplest form, right? It's breaking down, hey, what are the hazards in the room? How long is this going to take? What's the weather outside? Those components, though, help you really, formalize a risk matrix and break it down into the simplest forms. While people might not necessarily think, oh, well, it's military, that's not really related to cyber. When you break things down at a high level, it absolutely is.
Absolutely. And that's kind of for the military vets that follow me, and for I'm going to speak to a couple in the upcoming weeks at 2 different sessions. That those are the types of tips and tricks that I wanted to hear from you. I mean, I'm not going to lead you anywhere, but I wanted to hear from you so that they could share that type of experience, right?
Yep.
Because, I mean, in my role, like, I do risk assessments every day, and it's part of that risk assessment as part of, or that threat modeling as to how would a threat actor look to exploit an application, or what would they do, or what's a threat landscape like if you are a financial company in this day and age, like who are the threat actors coming at you, like doing that sort of stuff, like, is very helpful in your career.
And I think that, I didn't know this then 2 years ago, but one of the biggest components, if you're, for military, if you're in the intelligence world, and even if you're not, I think they get briefed on this, is insider threat training. And insider threat training is huge in cyber. It's not looked upon as one of the biggest threats because everybody thinks, your outsiders and your external threats are more important and bigger, but you can't ignore those. So when you have those insider threat trainings for the military, it relates very well over to cyber because of the stuff you learned.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now let's talk about so you've gotten a job. What do you do to spin up? I know in the military you often get put in a new role, you have to learn a whole new skill set. What was your approach for spinning up in this role and getting up to speed, learning the skills? Like how did you approach that?
Uh, so I'm a guy that goes head first. I like to jump into the deep end. So my first thing was saying, hey, okay, how can I learn the lingo, or how can I learn the Discover way, or how can I learn information security in general, so I have at least a basic knowledge of it. So I went to my teammates; they were very helpful. The one guy that helped get me hired, he gave me a lot of good resources online of just, hey, just YouTube information security training videos and watch them. It's in the simplest form. It's free. YouTube is a very underutilized source, I think. It's a free source that has a lot of good content out there. So I started with that, and then right away, I kind of looked into the benefits with Discover. So Discover has a good educational benefits, so they helped pay towards my master's. So I saw that. I knew I wanted to go back to school, and tangent, I just finished my master's degree in cybersecurity. So I started that 2 months after I got hired. And yeah, and it was funny because my manager's like, "You're starting really early." I was like, "Well, hey, I want to get started. I want to start learning." So I did that, and then that, I want to say September, no, July or August timeframe, I went to Kansas City and took a SANS class, and then took the certification 3 months after. So that first year, I was all about, learning opportunities. And then we had what was called working groups. And basically different teams come together and we have an hour and a half meeting, or less, just about the work that we're doing, anything that needs to be brought up to senior managers and our VP. And so my manager basically, within the first 2 months, put me in charge of that, just because she knew my background with briefing and PowerPoint presentations. And I'm very anal on PowerPoint presentations. And so that was good to help see, hey, this is what the other teams are working on, or this is what we do, or this, these are the different components. So that first year, I would say, term in the military, drink from the fire hose. It's what I did.
Nice, nice. And what was your SANS course that you took?
So it was just the basic one. So SANS 301,
Okay.
which is the general, and then I got the GX certification for I think it was just information security fundamentals is the cert.
Okay. And so you finished up your master's now.
Yep.
You have your SANS. What do you do to keep current now? How do you keep growing?
So I'm always, I think, so we have Discover has an instance with Udemy. So I'll watch videos on Udemy, just to keep current, as well as probably about a month ago, I started studying for my CISM, Certified Information Security Manager, through ISACA. And then I was just in it was a conference last week, G-Core. It was all virtual. So it was governance, risk and controls conference, which is what I do. I'm on the risk and controls team. So, just various things like that, reading articles. I get SANS news bites all the time on my work email. So just, it's not even research, just keeping up with, what's going on in the world of cyber, researching things if you need to, if you don't understand stuff, watching videos or doing different online trainings. I mean, there's a wealth of knowledge online, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. And so we're approaching the end of the show, and I typically like to ask you if you had a piece of advice that you wanted to share with someone, either from the military or from the fitness world, that's looking to follow in your footsteps. What would that advice be?
I think just The one thing that I would say that everyone says, use your network, use the people that you know. Don't be afraid to talk to people, even if it's reaching out on LinkedIn, how we got connected, or it's, just talking through people. Hey, do you know somebody that is in this field? And if they do, they might. If they not, okay, move on to somebody else. But don't be afraid to reach out to people either. Yeah, we live in a very, technology savvy world now, especially in the past years. What's taught us, it's everything's online communication. So I'd say, as a former military guy, use your network, whether it's in the military, whether it's out of the military. Don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to learn a new skill just randomly. Even if you're doing something else and you want to go into this field, start. The earliest you do it, the better.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your story, and hopefully you can inspire others to break into cybersecurity themselves. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I hope so as well.
Absolutely. And for all the listeners, feel free to subscribe on your favorite podcast host. We were on most of them, and then as well as YouTube. You can find all the latest episodes as well as all the historical episodes in our archive there as well. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your Friday.